the highest rated anime episode of all time, sitting at a 9.9 on IMDb, which in turn is the largest TV rating and review site on the planet. Even with all the 1 out of 10 downvotes by some fandoms, End of the Prologue, Vinland Saga Season 1 finale still holds anime's crown jewel in a sea of Western TV shows. And here I am, calling it overrated. Surely all those 38,000 plus ratings couldn't have been wrong, right? Well, I beg to differ. Something I believe we can all unanimously agree on, though, is that episode 24 is undeniably the highlight of season 1. Like, it's not even a debate. At least that's the general consensus. So, as we all know, it's the season finale, the culmination of Thorfinn's whole revenge story, the end of the prologue arc, as it's widely known. The climax of the episode is obviously Askeladd's death, but of course, in the build-up to that, King Sweyn is slain by Askeladd. King Sweyn, who's been an integral part of the plot, faces his demise alongside Askeladd, and of course, Thorfinn gets heavily affected by the events in this episode as well. It practically erases his conviction in life up until that point and reshapes how he lives his life from that point on. He spent his whole life working for the man who killed his father just for a fair shot at killing him himself, but in a single scene, that opportunity disappears forever. Everything he's done, essentially his life's work, is made utterly useless by Askeladd's death. You might not feel or understand this for what it is without first-hand experience, but I can tell you that having everything you've worked for throughout your whole life made obsolete within seconds is not a pleasant feeling. The one thing I would say was pleasant in this episode is that once-in-a-lifetime feeling you only experience when you watch a 9+ worthy episode. And that was the case for many people, almost everyone, in fact. The emotional impact this episode had is all thanks to the previous 23 episodes of the season. Makoto Yukimura gave us more than enough time to emotionally connect with the characters, especially Askeladd, since his death would only hit hard if the viewers had grown attached to him. His backstory plays a major role in this as well, getting us to sympathize with him and understand how his childhood shaped him into the kind of person he is today, why he fights for what he fights for, a noble cause a lot of people could easily relate to, especially considering it's heavily tied to his mother. End of the prologue essentially delivers on all that groundwork Mr. Yukimura was setting throughout the whole of season 1, like an explosion of all the builds of tension. But I'd argue the most important aspect, writing-wise, was Thorfinn's character. He gets deconstructed and redefined so convincingly in a single episode. I mean, it happens so naturally that it's suspicious. The naturalization of something that's supposed to be really difficult and catastrophic if not done well is further proof of why this episode is rated a 9.9. Episode 24 had the biggest narrative impact on the story. It just completely flipped the story on its head in a surprisingly unquestionable way. I know a lot of people found season 2 to be a snooze fest, and that could also be traced back to this episode, but more on that later. At the start of the episode, the focus was solely on plot, Askeladd's plans and all. Then towards the second half, the focus shifts to the psychological and emotional toll of his actions on both Thorfinn and Canute. But that's a bit of a problem to me. This might just be me nitpicking, but I feel like that change in tone halfway through the episode dampens the emotional impact of the second half. If this was going to be a psychological autopsy, it should have started as one from the get-go. I mean, look at ReZero's Outside of Madness. It starts off dark, gritty, and gory, and ends dark, gritty, and gory. If you know an episode is supposed to be special, it's supposed to be a climax, you should make sure to keep its tone and message as consistent as possible from start to end. Again, ReZero showed this by extending episode 15 to 40 minutes in the director's cut. I'm not saying end of the prologue should have been 40 minutes. This is just me setting an example. When an episode is special, you can just feel it's special. You know when and where extra effort has been put in, and end of the prologue just didn't feel special production-wise. The next take is more personal than anything else, but I'm gonna say it either way. After all my talk of Mr. Yukimura giving enough time for attachment to Askeladd's backstory being relatable, I just didn't feel any connection with him at all. And that would inevitably make his death, which is the crux of the episode, seem hollow to me. I can tell you I felt more emotional in episode 6 than I did in episode 24. In fact, I could name 6 different episodes in Vinland Saga that are better than End of the Prologue. They'll be in the description, by the way. It's common knowledge that for a character's death to hit hard emotionally, the viewers have to be attached to the character one way or the other. Like it doesn't matter, as long as that attachment is there, you feel the weight of the exit. To me though, Askeladd just existed. That's not to say he's not a good character. actually think he's quite compelling. I just didn't personally connect with him in any way. Earlier, I talked about season 2 being a snooze fest to some people, could be traced back to this episode. Let me make my stance clear first. I enjoyed season 2. In my ever so humble opinion, it absolutely dog walked season 1. That's not to say I don't understand the other perspective on this. The entirety of season 1 was built on this foundation of fast-paced, adrenaline-filled epic, which personified itself in the last episode. So obviously, that sudden drastic shift in tone would hit like a freight train. I think that last episode should have served as a transitional agent between the two seasons. Should have reflected season 2's tone a bit more so as to set expectations and reduce the surprise factor even a little bit. This isn't me blaming the tone shift entirely on episode 24. That would be ridiculous. It was fundamentally woven into the story. That's the type of tale Mr. Yukimura wanted to tell, and that's how he chose to tell it. Likewise, that's how Wheat Studio decided to pull off episode 24, which was amazing, by the way. Let me clear up a misconception you might have by now. I don't hate End of the Prologue. I don't hate Vinland Saga. I don't think episode 24 was bad. End of the Prologue was a very good episode. But to me, that's all it was. It was good and all, but it absolutely doesn't deserve a 9.9, much less the title of the highest rated anime episode of all time. An 8.6 is a perfect fit. I don't even think it's the best episode of season 1. That being said, for the 100th time now, it wasn't bad. I'm not saying it was bad. End of the Prologue is not the first of its kind and certainly won't be the last. Every day we see new episodes getting carried by hype to 9.5 plus territory. I could make 20 videos and it wouldn't be enough to cover them all. Hype though is a good thing. It's what pushes your favorite anime higher on the popularity charts, and who wouldn't want their favorite to get more reach? There's nothing wrong with rating an above average episode a 9 or a 10 out of 10. That's your choice. It might be a 7.5 on IMDb, but be a 10 out of 10 in your heart. That's totally fine to me. I even have a few of those myself. Where it gets concerning to me is when we collectively overrate an episode so much, it gets put on such a high pedestal, making it almost impossible to not defend it as an anime fan, seeing as it is, has been, and probably will remain our crown jewel.